Welcome back. It is the NFC East Mixtape, Volume 41, the greatest crossover ever attempted in the history of mankind. For our YouTube audience, that's right, we now are on YouTube. I am RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys. He is Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation. This show, our podcast audience knows this full well, is very unique in that we cover the NFC East as a whole. All four teams are discussed on this show every single week, and it is the most unique show, I think BLG would agree, at SB Nation, and that it lives in four different places. We posted at Blog of the Boys, SB Nation's home for Dallas Cowboys content, Bleeding Green Nation, SB Nation's home for Philadelphia Eagles content, Hogs Haven, Washington football team content, and Big Blue View, New York Giants content. It goes on all four podcast networks, and now it goes, after popular demand, on YouTube as well. BLG, everybody wants to see your bright, shining face. So what do you have to say to the YouTube audience specifically?
You're welcome.
Nice. Very nice. This is volume 41 of the NFC East Mixtape. So it took 40 of just being a podcast to get us off the ground on video. Puts a little bit more pressure on us, Brandon, because we have to be a little bit more perfect. Can't have as many mistakes, things like that. So you really have to kind of tidy things up on your end.
Yeah, nice of you to really support me as a teammate like that and throw me under the bus. But it's fine. Should be fun. Definitely have had people clamoring for this, RJ. So hopefully people will enjoy the live interactive element. I want to see comments, people. I want to see people saying things in the chat. So if we're here live, take advantage of it. Obviously, sometimes, maybe you're working, whatever, you can't make it. That's fine. If you listen to on the replay, we appreciate you still. But, it's cool if you're here live.
This speaks to your misunderstanding of the whole presentation. We're not live. This is the thing. This is still
we are. It says
no,
live
we're not.
In the corner.
Yeah, it's recording it, but we're not live. So
we're live right now.
We're not live at all. It's just recording.
We're on TV. We're on screens everywhere.
You literally were on TV, by the way, this week.
I know.
Talking Philadelphia Eagles and talking about Kirk Cousins, which is something that we're going to hit. We have some coaching situations to address when it comes to the Cowboys and the Eagles. There was a new general manager in the division, BLG, and there is a bit of a quarterback conundrum going on with the Washington football team. As we have all year, our YouTube audience is new to this. We are going to, and this will be the order we go in, at least over the offseason, go in the order of division standings, which means we start with the Dallas Cowboys. This is the first year we ever did this show, and the Dallas Cowboys won the division. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel really happy because it's such a hollow victory. We went through this last week. I don't need to rehash it. I mean, I can if you want to. If you really want to go through it all again, but
it's it's for the new YouTube audience. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, okay, let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. Some actually breaking, I don't want to say breaking news, but something coming out while we started recording, not streaming, BLG. We're going to talk about Dan Quinn, but Pro Football Network's Aaron Wilson is reporting that Kellen Moore is not expected to land a new job in this hiring cycle. Now, for what it's worth, this podcast is published on Wednesdays. Just so everybody knows, BLG and I record this generally on Tuesday morning, so that's when we're recording. So everyone is aware. It's possible something has come out since then. But this isn't shocking to me. It does seem like, it has always seemed like this offseason, at least, that Kellen Moore is likely going to return to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't get one last year when his stock was higher, and now with the way the Cowboys offense went later in the year, yeah, I don't think people are lining up to get him. And he's received some interview requests, right?
He's interviewed with, I'm going to botch this off the top of my head, but the Vikings, the Dolphins, the Jaguars, and I believe the Broncos. He has not been as popular as Dan Quinn, but he has had multiple interview requests. And Dan Quinn did actually prep him, did a mock interview. This is mock season for a lot of teams. It's mock season for a lot of coaches too.
Yeah, we did a lot of mocking of the Cowboys last week, so that was good. So how do you feel about this? You happy about this? Because you kind of seem frustrated by him.
I don't feel great. I don't feel, how can you feel great? I wrote something this week at bloggingtheboys.com that was about takeaways from the divisional round relative to the Cowboys. And my biggest one, there were four of them, but my biggest one was you look at all four games, and they were all obviously great and riveting. And BLG and I did discuss them at length on the SB Nation NFL show, where we have some shows that we're on as well. You can go listen to and subscribe that content at the SB Nation NFL show. Also on YouTube, look for the SB Nation NFL channel, and you can watch some of those shows live. Those we do stream live. But my biggest takeaway was the aside from the quarterbacks, because quarterbacks are obviously stars, but the star power that shone for all four teams. I know that the Bengals didn't have this like huge offensive showing, but Jamar Chase was awesome. Obviously on Saturday night, Deebo Samuel was awesome. Sunday, I think, really reinforced this idea for me. Cooper Kupp, I mean, awesome in general, but at the very end, you need a big play. You need to get, you need to move the chains. You need to get in field goal range. Who do you go to? Your superstar. And then I am amazed that no matter what, Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill can always make play after play after play for the Kansas City Chiefs. And that just isn't the case for the Cowboys. Again, quarterbacks aside, where is Amari Cooper in those big moments? Where is CeeDee Lamb in those big moments? Where I don't think that I believe this is something that's actually going to happen, but some people do. Where's Ezekiel Elliott in those big moments? And a lot of that blame, most of that blame falls on the players themselves, but it also falls on Kellen Moore. I mentioned to you last week when I was ranting about the Cowboys season ending, how they got the ball with 2 minutes and 54 seconds left and 3 timeouts, to work with against the Niners down by 6. They ran 6 plays, not a single target for Amari Cooper, 1 target for CeeDee Lamb, an incomplete pass, 1 target for Ezekiel Elliott. I don't know why in the passing game, no targets for Tony Pollard. So, I mean, I'm not pumped because Kellen doesn't, maybe the Cowboys don't have superstars. Just because we know their names doesn't make them superstars. But Kellen doesn't know seemingly how to elevate them, which is why I'm assuming he really is back. I'm not that pumped about it.
On the superstar front, I think that's an important point because, and I think it's something the Rams have done well in terms of like really focusing on getting those guys and not always necessarily worrying about the picks, is because like stars have the potential to make a big difference, as we just saw in the playoffs this weekend, as you touched on there. And one thing I always think about is coaches get a lot of credit and blame. Like when you think about it, it's kind of funny. Like, what do coaches get paid? They're getting paid like, I don't know, like $5 million a year, $6 million a year. Like,
yeah, nothing. Relative to the players, it's
yeah, the players are making way more. But it's funny though, because, and not to say that, like Mike McCarthy deserves to get off scot-free, because he clearly doesn't, and he's part of the problem, but and Kellen Moore here too. But at some level, like you're paying the superstar receiver or whatever, like 5 times or whatever as much to be, a dynamic player and make some plays and not have the coaching be perfect and just kind of let the talent win out at some point. So yeah, I definitely think that's a fair criticism. It is just kind of funny how quickly Kellen Moore's stock took a hit, because last offseason he was entering for these coaching jobs. There's talk like the Eagles might just hire him. And it's just funny how it goes from that. Like, wow, this guy might be the next hot thing. And now it's like, oh, we don't even want him back. He shouldn't be back.
I honestly thought that it was going to be a while before Kellen became a head coach when he did not get the Boise job or did not take the Boise job, because that was the one that it felt most likely he was going to leave the Cowboys for, especially a year ago with the Cowboys in this like awkward place. And yeah, everybody believed in a bounce back in 2021, but his stock was high, as we mentioned, and it was easy to understand the flaws that the offense had, although they did have success without Dak from a statistical standpoint. But it was easy to kind of sweep that under Dak was hurt, Tyron was hurt, Lyle was out rug, and Kellen's stock wasn't impacted in that sense. Boise, his obviously his alma mater. I mean, he always kind of has felt like a college guy. He's young. That's a little bit more, that's a little bit, it sinks a little bit more with the college game than it does. I know that there's the Sean McVays and Kyle Shanahan's and Matt LaFleur's of the world, but it made more sense. So when that didn't happen, it did feel like he was going to ultimately come back to the Cowboys for a little bit. That's why, I never really thought that he was going to get any, legitimate job. I thought he lost an opportunity to be a head coach, honestly, when the Cowboys beat the Saints on Thursday Night Football. You'll recall that was the game that Mike McCarthy missed due to being out on the COVID list himself. And that was it. That was an opportunity we talked so much about. That was an island game. It was Thursday Night Football. No other game is on. It's a stage for the whole world to see you. And if the Cowboys had come out and the offense had really shown up, it would have proved all the takes that people had about, well, this is Kellen's offense. McCarthy does nothing. It's all Kellen. All the success is Kellen's, whatever. And they were awful. And that was the beginning of a really awful offensive stretch for them. And so Kellen didn't shine. And it just, he continued to not be great. And yeah, they had a great performance against Washington on Sunday Night Football and the great performance in the regular season finale at Philly. But I mean, he hurt his stock a lot over the second half of the season, which is why I'm not stunned that he is likely going to return to the Cowboys. Somebody who's not, though, again, just based off of speculation, and again, we're recording this on Tuesday morning, is Dan Quinn. Seems like Dan Quinn is definitely headed for another opportunity. Seems like he's likely going to be a head coach. My personal read on this is Denver. That's what seems more likely than anything at this point. But the Cowboys, like the Eagles, and we'll touch on that in a moment here, are going to have to find a replacement for him. So who are the names? And this is relative also to Jonathan Gannon, who is, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator, also interviewing for head coaching jobs. Who were the guys that could be, could be names to watch for both the Cowboys and Eagles in this sense?
So, first of all, I don't even get the Dan Quinn thing. I know the Cowboys defense is good this year, but we're just forgetting he really underachieved as a head coach for the Falcons. And they were in a lot of bad spots before like the team would come back to win in the second half of the season.
I have said before, and it will make you happy that I bring this season up, that Dan Quinn did something super impressive that I don't think he gets enough credit for. And that we talk every year about how difficult it is for teams to get back to like, in general, like just to have repeat success is hard, but teams that lose the Super Bowl, right? That's a trope every year. Like, oh, teams that lose the Super Bowl, miss the playoffs, like whatever it is, like 83% of the time, whatever. Not only did the Falcons get back to the playoffs after 20, they lost the Super Bowl in the worst way possible, like worst way you could ever lose a Super Bowl. And they got back to the playoffs and they won a playoff game. I think that is so forgotten. They went to LA the first year under Sean McVay and they beat the Rams and they beat them handily. Now they did lose in the divisional round to the eventual world champion Philadelphia Eagles, which is why I knew you would appreciate that. But like that, this phrase gets thrown out so much, but especially based on the evidence in Dallas this past year, I do buy that he is a leader of men. And I think that that's a quality that a lot of teams look for in a head coach.
Yeah, it seems like he's a likable guy, which, counts for something. But again, if you look at just for the past few seasons, I saw this graph going around the other day that had like wins above expectation or whatever. And Dan Quinn's at the bottom, like, the Falcons win total, like they underachieved like many years there relative to expectation. So I wouldn't be crazy about that. But anyway, not really the point here. It's obviously a loss, the Cowboys losing him. And then just as we very well know on the show, that defense is not always sticky year to year. And it's going to be hard to count on. I think Micah Parsons will still be very good, but teams are going to have more of a chance to like game plan for him and account for him for whatever that's worth.
And there will be regression to the mean. Trayvon won't have double-digit interceptions, right?
Yeah,
totally.
Trayvon is the big one. It's just not going to happen, right? It can't. Although we said that during the season this year, this can't keep happening, and then it did. But yeah, I mean, year over year, you would assume that would change. So I think you expect a step back from there. But I mean, is there really any other name than the most obvious name for the Cowboys and your boy Mike Zimmer returning to Big D?
So I think something that should be said as far as looking at options for the Cowboys, and I'm curious as options for the Eagles, but Mike McCarthy, we're now entering year 3, presumably. We do have to get to a Mike McCarthy point in a bit, but something he has done often over the last 2 years is find former head coaches to be on his staff. That is a character trait that he really likes. The first year had Mike Nolan. Obviously, that didn't work out, but former. I can't
believe that was a real thing still. That was crazy.
Former head coach Jim Tomsula, another former San Francisco 49ers head coach, was on his staff.
Generous definition of former head coach, but yes.
I mean, the literal definition is not generous.
But like, come on. Yeah.
Joe Philbin, who's still on the Cowboys staff, by the way, former head coach of the Miami Dolphins. But that was a little bit more unique in that he had worked for McCarthy before. The other two hadn't worked under him. And I mean, at the time, hiring John Fossil, not a former head coach, but a former interim head coach. So you've got, again, lots of leadership qualities and experience. And then to hire Dan Quinn specifically. And Dan Quinn was like the biggest name last year. I don't know that he was the most sought after defensive coordinator. And I don't know that he would have gone and jumped to a defensive coordinator spot with just any team a year ago coming off, being fired by Atlanta. But it made sense. And it made sense to go to Dallas. If you have success with the Cowboys, you are, life is different than if you have success in Jacksonville or whatever. And so it has obviously very quickly elevated Dan Quinn back to being in the cycle. And so Mike Zimmer, former head coach, and so in that sense, like I do think Mike Zimmer is capable of running a solid defense. It won't be Dan Quinn's this year, but for non-Mike Zimmer reasons, as we've just, identified. But the part of Mike Zimmer that doesn't get me excited is that this is just a retread for the Cowboys. Like that does not feel good. Like, let's just go back 20 years and hire Mike Zimmer. That sounds so awful to me. And I'm not pumped about it. And I will definitely talk myself into it if that's what ultimately winds up happening. But I think the name it would, and I think the Cowboys might have too much pride to do it though, is Vic Fangio. That's the guy that I'm most interested by. I think he's most capable of putting together a legitimate defense, but he's the guy who kind of exposed them when the Broncos beat the Cowboys, and then who kind of talked about it. And so I do think the Cowboys have maybe too large egos to bring him in to be their defensive coordinator. Mike Zimmer is the easy option, and he checks off the boxes. He's an alum of the organization. He's a former head coach, and he's some. I could totally just see Mike McCarthy in his press conference being like, well, I coached against Zim a lot of times up in the NFC North. And, those were some tough football games, and those are some great defenses. And, Anthony Barr, and, he's just really Harrison Smith. I mean, and then the take will be the Cowboys just have to find their Harrison Smith. And it will be annoying, but that's the name that makes the most sense, unfortunately.
Maybe you can bring Earl Thomas out of retirement, and then there you go. You finally got him. Everything's solved. So you'd be interested in Zimmer, even though his defense let Kirk Cousins down. Interesting. Okay, interesting train of logic here. Just a joke for those who aren't familiar from the YouTube audience. I don't like Kirk Cousins. But I mean, I think that's a solid addition. And it is kind of funny to me how we talk about guys who we might like a lot as defensive coordinator or coordinator candidates, but totally out on as head coaches, like Vic Fangio. Like you said, you hated him, and understandably so. He was a big reason why you thought the Broncos were total frauds. And then
but that's a real thing. Some dudes
I
are
agree.
just better coordinators than they are coaches. And
Jim Schwartz.
I'm interested.
We've seen it.
Yeah, Jim Schwartz. I'm interested to see Jay Gruden. There's been talk about him, re-entering the coaching circle as an offensive coordinator. I would be very interested to see that. I just don't think he's a great head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't saying that's untrue. It's just kind of funny to me how we're you're really excited about this guy as a defensive coordinator, but then you're like, hey, coach, no, get away. I think it's interesting that there are some of these high profile names out there. It seems like there's kind of a sense around the NFL. It seems like right now that the head coaching class isn't super strong. Teams aren't necessarily super excited. And there's some evidence to that because as of when we're recording on Tuesday morning, still nobody has hired one. So clearly there isn't this slam dunk, no doubt about it candidate. That team, it's just like we want this guy and we want him right away. And that doesn't mean those guys work out anyway. Look at Urban Meyer last year. But but for defensive coordinator, there are, because there is Zim. There is Fangio, and he has had a lot of good defenses. I was looking back at some of his numbers yesterday because I did a post for bleedinggreennation.com about potential Eagles replacements for Jonathan Gannon, and I mentioned him in there. I mentioned Zimmer in there, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think he would go to Dallas or whatever. Don Martindale from the Ravens, also a pretty good name, and kind of crazy to me that he's available because when you look at his numbers, the Ravens had a bad defense this past season. They had 1 billion defensive back injuries, and the whole team was, and then they had a bunch of COVID issues too. And it's also one bad season. And you look at all the other seasons he had, and they're top 5, they're really, really good defenses. And, again, there's talent there too. So you kind of have to evaluate all that. But there are good options out there for really either the Eagles or the Cowboys.
Interesting. You said Don Martindale and specifically said good name and didn't even mention Wink. So.
Isn't it it feels like it's legally obligated? Do people actually call him that? Do people call him Wink Martindale? I mean, on Twitter, but people refer. I've never heard a reporter ask him a question. I'm not necessarily paying attention to Baltimore Ravens press conferences, but
I don't know. Wink.
I feel like it's one of those things. I feel like there are nicknames sometimes in life like that where you see the first name and then the nickname there and then the last name, but no one actually calls them the nickname primarily. They say the whole name, but that defeats the point of a nickname and just using the one thing. But
so
I don't know.
Well, who first started calling you BLG?
Well, that kind of evolved. There's a whole story behind that.
You did it though. So that's what you're saying. So you created it yourself. Wow. You're a much bigger narcissist than Don Martindale.
I never told anyone to call me that. I never referred to myself as that.
What do you get called most? Brandon Lee, or BLG?
No one ever calls me Brandon Lee. BLG in this space in terms of online, I think it came about too because if people are referring to me in the comments, let's say of BGN, you're not going to write out my whole name; it's too long. So you just you're putting the acronym there. But yeah, I never really used my middle name until I started writing because I didn't originally want to use my last name because I wasn't sure if I wanted this to be a career. I was just kind of doing it as a hobby. And I didn't want to dox myself and I like my full like name out there because kind of a
I
private
didn't want to
person.
put my social security number in my username on SB Nation, so that's why.
Yeah,
So.
I didn't want to do that either. So I just used Brandon Lee for a little bit. This was back when I was writing about the Sixers. I think really even before I started writing about the Eagles. So,
almost a worse
but then
team than the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, then it evolved, and then like I can't just take out my middle name at this point and just go first and last name because then people are going to be like, "Wait, where did that Brandon Lee guy go?" So it's just the full gambit now.
Wink is an interesting name. Back to that point, but yeah, like
what do they call him that too? Is he like Wink?
I don't know.
What's the deal?
I mean, when you wink, do you wink your right or left eye?
Probably right. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm a right winker.
Are you right-handed?
Yeah. Are you?
Yeah.
Are you one of these weird people though that there's like left-handed people that that throw with their right hand? You know what I mean? Like, but they write with their that's so stupid. Like,
yeah,
you can't cheat and have things both ways. Like, if you're gonna be left-handed, be left-handed. Do things left-handed.
I feel like a lot of the lefty people I know, are like that. Like I do, like I write with my left hand, but then I throw it like you said, or whatever, or they do something else with their right hand.
Can't have it both ways. Like, just pick a lane.
You can be ambidextrous.
That's not. But another thing is like when left-handed people wear their watch on their left hand. No, like the watch needs to be worn on the opposite hand of your handedness. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're right-handed, you wear your watch on your left hand, or vice versa.
Correct.
I actually on that subject, we're deep into the tangents here, and we're about to get back. I feel bad. Like I'm looking at my watch. The knobs are on the right side. They should be reversible because if you're left-handed and you're gonna wear it, like the knob is on the part that when you bend your wrist back, it would hit you and like dig into your skin. That's not fair.
What kind of watch are you wearing over there?
This is just an Apple Watch.
Show the people.
It's an Apple Watch. We're not. This is not a sponsorship. We're not sponsored by Apple.
I mean, if Apple wants to sponsor, we'll.
Yeah, I mean, like we're open, but I mean, this is not a paid sponsorship. Is all I'm saying.
Okay.
We didn't come to this.
But if you want to get a new Apple product, use discount code NFC East Mixtape. No, that's not.
That would be such a long discount code. Yeah, but that's like you would think at the very least the Apple Watch would be reversible, where you could flip it upside down and put it on left-handed people, so that the knob would be on the side closer to their hand. You know what I'm saying?
You hear that, Tim Cook?
Yeah, I mean, we're just here. We're out here throwing out $1 million ideas, like free $1 million ideas. Anyway, last thing on the Cowboys. Actually, two more things on the Cowboys before we move on. There were rumors, Brandon Lee, that popped up over the weekend about a certain head coach that is not in the NFC East. He only wishes he was in the NFC East. New Orleans Saints head coach Sean Payton doesn't know if he's going to return to the Big Easy. You ever call it that? The Bayou?
Yeah.
The Lou? Doesn't know if he's going to be back with the New Orleans Saints. So, like Mike Zimmer, who was also part of Bill Parcells' staff, all the rumors are swirling. Could Sean Payton really wind up the Cowboys head coach?
This never goes away. This is always a thing.
1 to 10, just like all I want on answer, 1 to 10. If the Cowboys, Indiana Jones idol swapped Mike McCarthy for Sean Payton, you are a 1 to 10 nervous about them.
Probably like a 9, 8.
And what are you today, currently?
Oh, so comparatively? Yeah, probably like 4 or 5.
Yeah. Sean Payton has a different level of oomph that I think this team really needs. This organization really needs.
I mean, they almost made the playoffs without a quarterback. They they were really close to making the playoffs. The 49ers don't win in overtime against the Rams, then the Saints are in. And that's crazy because they had starting quarterback combination of Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, Trevor Siemian, and freaking Ian Book. Like that's and then not only that, but they had a bunch of other injuries too. Like Kamara was banged up for most of the season.
Michael Thomas didn't play at all the entire year.
Thomas didn't play at all. Teron Armstead missed a ton of time. Ryan Ramczyk missed time. Andrews Pete, I think, missed like a good chunk of the year.
Dude, they missed. Man, you saying that? I mean, like I think we do this where we assign all of the credit for something to just one person, and I don't mean to do that, but obviously Sean Payton is Sean Payton. Think about like how they draft. You know, like he is so good at building legitimate teams. Like they might not win the Super Bowl every year, but they are going to be in the mix every year. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he is such a great head coach. And my take on this, if you're curious, this is the least juicy Dallas Cowboys offseason I can remember. I mean, I think the last one that I felt this like about an offseason was maybe after 2013. heading into the 2014 draft. Now, the draft kind of like got things going a little bit because that was the Johnny year, and then they wound up with Zach Martin, and then Sean Lee got hurt, and so that changed a lot of things. But that they were coming off 3 straight 8-8 years, and it was just like, man, what? Like, what's the point of all this? And so this offseason has a similar lack of juice, but this would change that from 0 to 100. I mean, this would make them instant Super Bowl legitimate contenders, and this would be, man, you can like sit here, you could talk about Kellen Moore, you could talk about Mike McCarthy, you could talk about John Kitna and how he worked with Dak. There is nobody that would be better suited to help Dak Prescott regain his eliteness than Sean Payton.
And it overrides like the nostalgia factor, like the retread. Like we're bringing him back. It's another like it doesn't matter. It's Sean Payton.
And it's like it is this great like he's finally here. Like they finally, you know what I mean? Like because this has been this like will they won't they sort of thing to this, and that would obviously be a true thing. But there is like a huge level of football sense to this that I need it to happen, but I really doubt it does.
I mean, it wouldn't have like it's hard to think it's going to happen at this point, this offseason, right? Like it's just we're kind of late in the game. Although it is weird. Did you see the video of the Saints owner? What's her name? Gail Benson.
Yeah, and how she was like, "We don't know what's going to happen."
I was like, "What is this?" Like, I don't know. I'm like a Saints fan. Like, what are you talking about? I don't love this. Like, we don't know what he's going to do.
Dennis Allen is out here interviewing for other head coaching jobs, and so like, what's he? What are you going to do if you're New Orleans and then he gets a job and then Sean Payton leaves you high and dry? Like, that's really unfair. It does feel more than anything. The report from NFL Network was that he might kind of mini retire. He's only 58 years old, but he might sit out the year a la Bruce Arians and then return next season. It does seem like he's done with New Orleans. Like he's, and I could see that. Like, I mean, it's been 15 years, over that, maybe he just wants something new drive to work kind of thing. But this feels so inevitable that he's going to sit the year out, do TV, the Adam Sandler or what is it? Kevin James. I guess Adam Sandler is, part of it, but the Kevin James show or movie is going to come out. Mike McCarthy will lead the Cowboys to an 11-6 record and a wild card exit. He'll get fired and they'll hire him next year. That's what it feels like to me.
Right. I think it's more like that. It's not this offseason. It would be about that. I could see that happening. And I think part of it isn't just about like change of scenery. It's just about where the Saints are. Like they have no clear path to getting, a quarterback who's going to actually legitimately like help them contend, especially in part because too, like they're in a bad spot, like cap wise, everything. And they've mortgaged some draft picks recently. They went all in for Breeze, I think, which is reasonable and they should. And I'll add here too, that I don't like to admit this because I don't like Sean Payton, but I mean, objectively, he is good. And I think the Saints, that run they had kind of is similar to the Eagles of the early 2000s, where like those Eagles teams were good enough to win a Super Bowl. And if in fact, like, if you look by like Football Outsiders, they're like one of the unluckiest teams to ever.
Yeah, like one of the non-dynasty dynasties, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like they should have at least won one Super Bowl, just in terms of like how good they were. But that's part of the NFL is sometimes you just get bad luck in bad spots, and that's what happened to them. That's probably what really happened to the Saints too. So yeah, it would be. So that's kind of a comforting thought, I guess, for Cowboys fans is that if McCarthy doesn't work out next year, which he won't, and you blow it up, then you just turn to Sean Payton after this season. So
it feels very, though, Jason Garrett, Lincoln Riley, right? Like, whenever that ends, like we'll just pluck Lincoln Riley out of Oklahoma. And that, I mean, I'm not saying that should have happened.
You can't assume, and you can't just assume he's going to be there too, because, what if another team comes calling before or makes an even bigger offer or, has a better situation?
Yeah, like, I mean, we're just pontificating here, but like, what if Andy Reid retired? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so it's like, where am I going to go? Kansas City or Dallas? I mean, you're right. Like, last actual Cowboys thing, and you put this on the rundown, and I'm happy to answer it, but it's really more of your question. Does the 49ers beating the Packers in the division round make Cowboys fans feel better or worse or neither?
Yeah. What's the answer?
I am super petty. And so I'm answering through that lens. It makes me feel a lot better. It doesn't like I honestly have no care associated with, well, at least we know the Niners are a good team. Like, so that like I take no solace in that. Like I'm still pissed that the Cowboys lost.
Especially because like they're not.
Right. My satisfaction is really independent of who the 49ers are. It's really completely associated with it. Because I mean, we talked about it on the mixtape last week. I know we're new here for the YouTube audience, but I told you, I said it is inevitable that the 49ers are going to go get waxed after beating Mike McCarthy's team by the team that fired Mike McCarthy. And if they had waxed, the Niners would have gone to 3 straight NFC championship games after having fired him. I mean, they've still been to the divisional round at least 3 straight times, which is obviously an impressive thing. But that felt inevitable to me. So to not have to hear about the Packers and Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers and all this stuff, like that is a bit of personal joy that I'm excited about.
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't really getting at that part. Yeah. I was talking more about the 49ers, like how actually their quality of team, but they're not good. Like, I mean, obviously they have star players and the defense has been really good. And D'Amico Ryans, former Eagle, shout out, deserves a lot of credit for that. But I mean, it's the worst quarterback in the playoffs remaining, and somehow they're winning, and it doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't like it because you got people out here saying, and like through an Eagles lens, like it doesn't matter with the quarterback, you can kind of get by, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
No.
This team that you're talking about also thinks he's not good enough and traded picks to get his replacement. So anyway.
I do think at the very least that like the lesson I hope that teams, namely the Cowboys, learn from the Niners is you can like mortgage your future, if you want to call it what San Francisco did, that, and survive it, right? Like because they technically have like no net return on Trey Lance in terms of the here and now, and they're totally fine. And you know, I know I saw I think in it was Mike Sando in his Pick Six column. It might have been him. It might have been somewhere else I read. But either way, read Pick Six. It's awesome. But kind of just wondering, like, what if they hadn't done that? Like, what if they had drafted Micah Parsons or Rashawn Slater? Like, it would make them all the more better. And that's a little bit of hindsight. That's unfair. And obviously, we don't know what Trey Lance is going to become. It's totally worth it if he's a franchise quarterback for the future. But yeah, I'm rooting for them to lose. Of the 4 remaining teams, the 49ers are the one I least want to win the Super Bowl.
Be the Rams for me. Not a Sean McVay guy. If I had to rank him, I want the Bengals to win.
That's my number one.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not like Joe Burrow? Like, what is unlikable about Joe Burrow? Like, what would you, unless you know?
I will say this:
fan and Ravens fan.
He is going to, and this is just like the way it works. His confidence will turn into, as he gets older and more time passes, it will turn into, from a perception standpoint, arrogance. You know,
I agree.
And so like that will be the reason people don't like him. Like it's
that's
cool
like the
now.
Warriors. Yeah, like the Warriors were cool when they came up, and then they got annoying because they started winning, and then they had
the Chiefs even. Like people are sick of the Chiefs. Yeah.
And I agree with that, but I'm saying like right now, like in right in the moment, and I don't think you can find anything. And so I want the Bengals to win. I think it's gonna be tough with that offensive line. I think they can make it to the Super Bowl. I do think they can beat the Chiefs because Burrow. I would not doubt Burrow. Like I would not put it past him. Like he doesn't deserve to be doubted. Like he can make something happen. And then I would probably take the Chiefs after that. I'm not excited about it at all. Like it doesn't. I'm pretty indifferent. I don't care. We'd have to hear Pete Sweeney talk about it, I guess.
Yeah. But, Pete Sweeney, I do a show with the Explanation NFL show, so everyone is aware.
Yes, on Mondays. Yeah.
But I will say, I originally had the Chiefs second in my top 4 because I'm Bengals, Rams, Chiefs, Niners, just to be clear. But like I just want something new. You know what I mean? Like, and
I agree.
And that's really what it is. And I don't mind the Rams. The Sean McVay thing would be really annoying. I'm totally with you. It would be super annoying. But
I said this to Jimmy on BGN Radio, just to cut in real quick. If Sean McVay wins 1 Super Bowl, it will be talked about like it was the greatest Super Bowl win. And
sure.
Like and Doug Peterson actually has won a Super Bowl, and Sean McVay gets like more credit than him currently a lot.
No,
like,
dude.
So I don't even.
And it will be like they will get more credit for winning it at home than the Bucs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like it will, and because the NFL and like all their like NFL Network loves to hype up the Rams and SoFi Stadium. You know, like it's like the LA-ness of it all and everything. Blah blah. It would be like talked about forever. Like LA. It would be really annoying. But where I land, like I mean, I'm willing to look past the McVay thing. If it can't be the Cowboys, I like to see great players get rings. Like I hate when a great player ends their career without a ring. I would love to see Cooper Kupp get a ring. I would love to see Aaron Donald get a ring. I would love to see Jalen Ramsey get a ring. Like they all deserve it. But you're right, and I would love to see Matthew Stafford get one ultimately. But that would be the most annoying thing. It would be the Rams. Like think about all the times that the Rounders gift would be used. They went all in, you know. But that would be really annoying. But I would still prefer it to the Chiefs. So. Anyway, okay. Let's talk about Jonathan Gannon, kind of the only thing going on with the Eagles. We touched on this, but is he really going to get a head coaching job, in your opinion?
I just don't get it. Like, why? Like, D'Amico Ryans is more qualified than him. Like, it's almost like a direct. It's like a head. It's not even like apples and oranges. It's like a head-to-head kind of comparison. Both first-year defensive coordinators, both D'Amico Ryan's defense way better, clearly has some more talented players in fairness, more playmakers and stars and stuff like that, but still like way better and doing really impressive stuff. The results are there. And like leadership and all that, like because everyone keeps talking about how well Jonathan Gannon is interviewing, and a little of that is clearly like just his agent. I mean, there's some truth to it. I don't doubt that, but everyone said he interviewed amazing with the Broncos, and he's not even a finalist there apparently for their job. Like they're down to 3, and he's not in there. There's talk that the Houston Texans want to talk to Gannon for a second interview, and that some consider him to be the favorite there. So we'll see about that. He also interviewed with the Vikings, where he used to coach. So we'll see about that. But I will note that the Vikings were interviewing 2 Eagles front office members for their GM position, and they were ruled out. They're not the finalists for that job. So maybe that kind of hurts him. Not having really that Philly connection that could work in their favor. I don't know. But yeah, I just don't get it. I don't get why Gannon is getting this buzz. I don't think the Eagles need to fire him, to be clear. But like, I just don't think he is like here as one of the top coaching candidates. He's not a top 5 coaching candidate in this cycle to me. We ranked them today.
I don't even know who the top 5 are.
We ranked them today on the Oddcast, so you should listen to that.
I'm not going to listen to that. But
you will. That's fine.
But I mean, like, because normally there's your clear consensus number 1. That's the guy. That's the most coveted name. I kind of feel like, just from perception, this isn't a ranking. I kind of feel like Dan Quinn is that. Like, Dan Quinn seems to be the most popular name that everybody wants a piece of. I can't believe that Doug Peterson is not number 1. That's strange to me.
He was my number 1. Spoiler alert.
But Jonathan Gannon, I mean, the take I've seen at BGN and among, I think, a lot of Eagles fans friends on Twitter, but has kind of been like, okay, cool, take him. Like, nobody's going to be like upset. And I know you're kind of harping on D'Amico Ryans, and like some of that is that they're still playing. Like, he would be much more involved in the interview process if they were eliminated. But
some of it is also race, unfortunately. But yeah,
but their defense is, and some of that is talent. Like, I don't want to take away from D'Amico Ryans, but some of that is he's got a lot more to work with, but he also has big shoes to fill with Robert Saleh leaving. Like, so contextually, I do think he's a better option than Jonathan Gannon. But I mean, I remember hearing, Brandon Staley, who, he interviewed super well. He's super awesome. And I'm not like out on Brandon Staley, but not the super awesome head coach that a lot of people thought he was going to be. And I remember he was on Adam Schefter's podcast last year, and you can tell he's just this guy that people click with. And I'm not saying he's like a snake oil salesman? Is that what it is? Is that the phrase? Like, I'm not saying that's what he is, but there's a little bit of like charm to why I think people fall for him a little bit. And I think the fall for him isn't commensurate with who he really is as a head coach. I think he has flaws that people are willing to look past because they like him. And Jonathan Gannon might be turning into that option for this year.
It's funny because I think it was like Jeremy Fowler or Dan Graziano or whoever from ESPN literally had like a blurb in their like coaching carousel update post that was like, people view Jonathan Gannon as the next Brandon Staley. And I almost feel like it's not quite the same comparison because Gannon didn't work with Staley. But remember, like the Sean McVay's friends thing, that offseason of that hiring cycle.
By the way, that has aged really well. Like all of them, except for Cliff, are really good.
Say not Cliff Kingsbury though, and that
was the one. Yeah, that was the one that hyped it up the most, right?
Well, the Cardinals literally. I remember, I remember reading the press announcement or whatever of the Cardinals hiring Cliff Kingsbury, and it did say in there like he is Sean McVay's friend, and I was like, "What are we doing? Like this needs to be in here."
Looks good, and I hate that Kyle Shanahan gets lumped into that because he had success independent of McVay, but they are regarded as but they're regarded as like the McVay archetype, and so again, even though it doesn't make sense when it comes to Shanahan, but Zach Taylor, that's what I'm saying. Like that has aged, aside from Cliff, really, really, really well. But
yeah, I don't think either of us are like super in on Zach Taylor still, though. We kind of have questions, but
sure.
Yeah, I get it. But anyway, Jonathan Gannon has mentioned Brandon Staley a couple times, I think. So I think like it's like getting some like like NFL owners are like seeing more comparison, like, oh, that guy's talking about him. He's looking at what he's doing. So yeah, I think it's silly, and yeah, a lot of Eagles fans would be happy to see him go. And like, so it's weird because like when I'm saying it and I'm saying like, I don't get it, people are like, oh, don't say this or it'd be a good thing. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but like I'm still having a hard time logically accepting this, and that's what I kind of come down to. Like I'm not just thinking about like, okay, it'd be good for the Eagles. Go ahead. I'm still trying to logically figure it out, and I just can't.
I'm telling you, dude, there's something to that Brandon Staley-ness. I'm a little out on him. And I remember, and I gave him a chance, gave him a fair chance. But like I remember that interview he did with Adam Schefter. He was being interviewed by Adam Schefter, and in talking, he told Adam that he had read his book. And Adam wrote a book about his a part of his personal life. It's a great book that people should read. It. Don't mean to insinuate otherwise, but Adam was like, "Whoa, you read my book?" And I could see that like impressing. You know what I mean? Like it's like that would like whenever you get a compliment like that, like he's like, "Whoa," and Brandon was like, I like to read," and Adam was like, "Whoa, you like to read." So I'm not saying Jonathan Gannon's a bad coach, but there are a lot of other more preferable options in my mind. Again, Doug Peterson should be number one in this cycle. I can't believe that he isn't. So we'll see. But okay. So anything else on the Eagles?
Well, some of those we didn't really talk about potential replacements if he does get hired elsewhere.
So
I don't think
no Zimmer, no Fangio.
I think Fangio is a possibility. He grew up like 2 hours north of Philly, and he said he grew up in
worst part of the
Eagles
country.
fan. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's like that's not the main reason why he would come back, but maybe he likes the area. And
who would like the area?
He also overlapped with Eagles vice president of player personnel, Andy Weidel, for a few years, I believe, in Baltimore. So, you kind of look at that connection. You can also say the same thing about Wink, as he was also in Baltimore. So I would keep an eye on those things. But I tend to think the Eagles aren't going to go in that direction, in part because there was a bit of a contentious dynamic between Doug Peterson, who was unproven head coach, and Jim Schwartz, who had been a head coach and, probably thinks of himself still, or did think of himself at the time as like head coach material. So I don't think
the matchup of Sirianni and whether it's Fangio or Zimmer wouldn't exactly work well.
I don't think the Eagles want to like tempt fate. I'm not saying they would definitely know it wouldn't work. I just think they don't want to go down that path again. And I also think, like, I don't know if this was just Doug. I think Doug was a factor. But under Doug, there was a lot of internal promotion as opposed to like looking outside, and to a fault. Like I felt like, why are you promoting Mike Groh automatically when you could potentially hire Jim Caldwell as your offense coordinator and he's out there? Like hire the best candidate. Like hold a search. They didn't even hold a search. They were just like, we're going to automatically promote Deuce Staley or Mike Groh. It's like, well, why not interview external candidates too? Because maybe they're better than what you have in house. I hate the idea that in house is like always the automatic correct answer. Anyway, but I tend to think they're going to go that route and promote Denard Wilson, who is the Eagles' defensive backs coach, and he used to be the passing game coordinator on defense for the Jets. Darius Slay has praised him. Darius Slay had a Pro Bowl season, bounce back year. Avonte Maddox had like the best year of his career, got that contract extension. The Eagles signed Steve Nelson, and I don't think he's going to be like a long-term player for them, but he was solid coming off the street for, a signing that they made right before training camp. And Zach McPherson, who's the Eagles' fourth-round pick, he showed promise in training camp. So they got some good production out of their defensive backs, not as much as safety, but I think that's kind of more of a talent issue. So I think the Eagles might just end up promoting him. Jason LaCanfora had mentioned Denard Wilson as like a defensive coordinator candidate back in December before like any of this was even being talked about, Gannon possibly moving on. So it seemed like there has been some buzz about that. So I tend to think they'll just promote him if Gannon does leave.
Jonathan Gannon, Kellen Moore, maybe both just sticking around, and everybody kind of like, meh, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
All right. You ready to talk about Washington?
The Washington football team. As they are known now.
Hold up. So let me pull up a calendar. Nobody on the YouTube audience can see this, or on the podcast audience either. Even you can. Only I can see it. Yeah. Next week, our show goes out on Wednesdays on all 4 podcast networks, and now on YouTube as well. But next Wednesday, so a week from today, the day of the release, is release day for Washington. The new uniform, new name, new everything. So we are at the time of our recording 8 days away from knowing what they're going to be. Lots of speculation. It's going to be Commanders or what are the other top speculations? Admirals is up there. It seems like any of the Wolves related names are out, at least according to the internet, but we'll see. Commanders would be so lame. I would feel stupid. Like honestly, like typing something up being like Dallas Cowboys versus Washington Commanders. I would feel really dumb.
That's like an XFL or AAF name. With all due respect, I like that fun with those leagues, but they're not. It's not the NFL. Like, it feels fake.
Right. I mean, I don't know, and I don't know what name would have satisfied me or will satisfy me. I don't know that there is one, but Obviously the old one had to go. I mean, at this point, I mean, I'm not somebody that's like keep football team, but like it has to start with an R, I feel like, because they have that logo that is just the like kind of cursive R, you know what I'm talking about? So like if you want to use some like semblance
and
of
that's
history,
good.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like use that, you know what I mean? Like use something that starts with an R so that you have some sort of like loose connection to your history. You have the same color scheme and all this stuff. Commanders is so dumb. Like if you're gonna go with something like that, make it topical to the area. Be the presidents. You know what I mean? Like that's like, I mean, I'm not in love with that, but at least there's a reason it makes sense. What is commanders? Like I guess commander in chief maybe, but then you're like the Chiefs exist. You know what I mean? Like that's just a weird. I don't know but whatever. Whatever their name is, they also need to figure out their quarterback situation, Brandon Lee, which is kind
more
of
important, I would say, honestly.
Yeah. There are rumors that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to head for television because that's where everybody goes to now. That would be back-to-back quarterbacks for Washington, by the way, leaving their team to go do television in Alex Smith and Ryan Fitzpatrick. But I sent this to you over the weekend. There was a report that came out over a podcast. Our friends at Hogs Haven talked about this, that last offseason during the draft, I don't know if it was the draft, in the lead up to the draft, whatever, but BLG, Washington reportedly tried trading up for Justin Fields last year. Remember, the Chicago Bears did trade up. Remember, we did that what if episode where we talked about what if they had lost the Week 17 game last year, would they have drafted him, whatever, but they reportedly tried trading up for him and might look into trading for him this offseason. Now, they would probably be able to get him for a better rate than they would have, obviously, if they had paid on draft night, because the Bears had to give up that first-round pick to the Giants. But I love Justin Fields. I would love for him to be awesome and love for that to take off, but I just can't see how you can talk yourself into him right now.
You can't, because he was really bad as a rookie. And I get, young player, whatever, support system wasn't amazing. Everyone's to blame Matt Nagy, which, I'm not going to say that he was the best coach in the world to help Justin Fields succeed. There's this idea that Justin Fields is like just a victim and he couldn't do anything. Like, give me a break. He was terrible. He was really bad. And this wasn't unpredictable, by the way. Some of us said here that, hey, maybe the team that has demonstrated they don't know anything when it comes to quarterbacks didn't get Justin Fields right, and that he's actually worse than people seem to think. Like people couldn't come to grips with that. Like, actually, Justin Fields might not be as good as we think, and there is a reason he's falling, as opposed to like everyone else is stupid and we're the smart ones.
I'm way more inclined, though, and I'm not saying this is rational, but I'm way more inclined to believe that Justin Fields and even Mitchell Trubisky are talented. And I'm not saying that they're like supremely talented, but that the Bears contributed to making them worse. They might not be great players, but I'm way more inclined to believing that the Bears made them worse than that they are just 100% bad, if that makes sense. Sure. I'm willing to give them both second chances.
But that's what I always kind of talk about too. Yeah, everything. I think my saying is everything is something to some extent.
You think you're saying yes. You don't know your own saying?
I think it is. I'm not sure, but like I always use the example of Carson Wentz in 2020, and people are like,
"Great example."
Well, like they list all these. Well, they list all these excuses, and I'm like, okay, what you're saying would be reasonable if he was like, the 15th best quarterback in the league. No one's asking him to be the MVP. No one is saying like that's the bar, the standard. They're saying like, can you not be the worst starting quarterback in the NFL? And so that's kind of a similar thing. So I wouldn't really be all that scared at all, honestly, if Washington got Justin Fields. And I don't think the Bears are going to give up on him so soon because, like, you traded a future first-round pick for this guy. I think you want to see it through. And I feel like he's part of probably a pitch to a lot of your head coaching candidates. Like, we have
and
Justin
GM candidates.
Here. And like, so you have this guy, and I don't think they're just going to dump him immediately. For what? Like, what's the alternative that's so easily available to them?
I mean,
they don't have a first-round pick.
That's what I'm saying. The ideal world would be they recoup a first round pick. They get Washington.
You're not going to get a first round pick.
I agree. I mean, I'm just again, if we're laying out the math, that's the math that it would take, but it's not legitimate math. Okay, so this is our first show that's also on YouTube. We have something that only the YouTube audience can see. So podcast audience, we still love you. But let's put this up here, BLG. You sent me this. This is a poll from Hogs Haven. Go ahead and tell the people what it is.
This is amazing. Honestly, if you're not looking at this, I can't even imagine. So make sure you're looking at the YouTube. But I was looking at Hogs Haven, and they have an article about like some of their quarterback options. They're not great. And they they did a good job of outlining all of them. But the option out of 5 different scenarios here, kind of 4, but the 5th one is undefined. So we have scenario 1.
Hold up. The question for the podcast audience is, which quarterback scenario do you most prefer? They ran a poll at hogshaven.com.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So that's the question. There's 5 different poll options. Number 1, scenario 1, Russell Wilson. Scenario 2, Jimmy G. Scenario 3.
I love how, by the way, the G in that has a period. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like
Jimmy G.
It's okay, but keep going.
Scenario 3 is a veteran free agent and add a rookie. Scenario 4, so kind of almost like, signing Ryan Fitzpatrick, but also adding a rookie. Scenario 4,
like what the Bears did with Andy Dalton and Justin Fields.
Or that. Scenario 4, roll with the rookie, and then they just have a different option as option 5. The number 1 option, RJ, is scenario 3, sign a veteran free agent and draft a rookie to groom. And then behind that, at 30%, is roll with just a rookie. So no one wants Jimmy G. That is 7%. And then Russell Wilson got 19%. But come on, like Russell Wilson is not going to Washington. Like how much money does anyone want to bet me that Russell Wilson is not going to Washington?
I would say that factored into the votes here. Like because you know what I mean? I think most Hogshaven community members, when they voted, were like, well, this isn't practical. You know,
if they knew he wanted to go there, then that's
right.
Yes, the answer.
But yeah, the vet free agent, and like it might be Andy Dalton. You know, like that might be no, seriously. I mean, like I'm not saying it's a good idea, but that might be an option. Like
I don't think so. I don't think they can do that. I don't think they can sell that though. You have to sell these things. Like, you know what I mean? You have to sell it to somewhat. You could sell Ryan Fitzpatrick because he only got benched by the Dolphins because they wanted to get younger and go with Tua, but he was playing like well enough. And also it was like, okay, we won the division last year. We need this placeholder. We need more than we got last year, which is like nothing at quarterback. I just don't know how you sell Andy Dalton, especially getting, benched for Justin Fields.
So
and how that played out. I think Jimmy G is the answer because you can be like, hey, he's a quarterback who played in the NFC Championship game for the second time in 3 years.
But so if we live out this poll's top option, which is a vet free agent and a rookie. Vet free agent. BLG fell off the camera, by the way. Are you okay? Did you drop something?
Yeah, I dropped something. I'm good. Yeah.
What did you drop?
My phone. It's fine though.
Your phone? You need your phone to do the show? Really? You're that committed?
I was looking up the names that begin, like things that begin with R. I was trying to find a good name, but I couldn't.
Good one. Okay, so these are the vet free agents. Again, like if you have to pick one of these to pair with whatever rookie you ultimately land. Again, this is the poll, leader according to Hogshaven community members. Ben Roethlisberger, not happening, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Teddy Bridgewater. That seems kind of possible, right? Like you could totally
what's
see
the
that.
Point, man.
No, but like I'm just telling you the names again to live in the.
I know.
Andy Dalton, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Cam Newton, and people have floated that out forever because of the Ron Rivera connection. That would be
Cam is done.
That would be such a bad idea.
He's obviously done.
Tyrod Taylor, who was solid early on for the Texans, and that would be what everybody would talk themselves into. But yeah, bad idea. Jameis Winston.
I mean, there's some upside there, but I mean, it's not going to end well. I mean, it's better than a lot of those options. I'd rather have Jameis than Andy Dalton. Sure, they should sign Nick Foles.
Other notable names, just to Jacoby Brissett, Joe Flacco, Marcus Mariota. I mean, man, dude, it's not good.
Foles. Give Foles a chance. Why not?
Colt McCoy, bring him back.
Bring him back.
The one that I think so my favorite archetype of backup quarterback is the young guy who has started a lot of games and has had some success. You're never going to have like a stud franchise quarterback as your reserve, but that's the archetype I like the most, which is why 2 years ago, not that he was young, but I liked the Cowboys signing Andy Dalton. I thought, and I maintain, if he had to play a pinch, a 1-2 game stretch, that's the perfect archetype of guy to have. I thought Philadelphia trading for Gardner Minshew, we talked about this then. I loved that. That's the archetype of guy I want. In that sense, again, not saying this is a great idea, but this sort of fits the archetype. Mitchell Trubisky. I'm like, that to me is
I don't think you can sell that.
I don't think it's a high ceiling. Let me be very clear. But I think it's the highest ceiling of all of your other options.
What about like trade second, third for Tyler Huntley? Does that do anything for you? I think
Not
that's a little
really.
bit exciting. I think
But
especially
like, no,
in
I
that
don't want to give
area.
up. I don't want to give up capital, especially again if we're living in the pull option where it's a vet free agent and a rookie. Like if you're conceivably developing the rookie, whatever, then Mitchell Trubisky's the guy. Let Mitchell Trubisky come in, help unlock Terry McLaurin, free Terry McLaurin. You know what I mean? Like develop all these other players if you want. That's that would be nice. That's so whatever.
I don't know if Mitchell Trubisky wants to go to Washington though. I think like I could be wrong, but
He
I
will
think
after they're the Commanders. Put another C on his helmet, like the Chicago Bears.
I don't like how quickly you thought of that. I just like kind of being with the Bears and kind of being around like struggles and everything. I just wonder if he wants to be around that. He might like being the backup for Buffalo and being liked and like appreciated a little bit more. Yeah.
By the way, on the subject of the Bears, just because look, we love the NFL, we're sickos, we love this game, we love this sport. The Bears are, according to Adam Schefter, finalizing a deal to hire Chiefs Assistant Director of Player Personnel Ryan Poles as their next general manager. So one of the vacancies now filled. Bears have a general
Ryan
manager.
Poles in, Nick Foles out.
Nice. Okay, last thing for us, BLG, before we get out of here. And again, YouTube audience, this is on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. It's on a playlist under the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel. And again, it lives as a podcast on all 4 networks. If you like what we're doing, please let us know. Any encouragement, positive or negative, because there could be negative encouragement. Yeah, I mean, we'll call that constructive criticism. It's always appreciated. But last thing, I actually said, did I say the first spot is filled? I didn't mean to say the first, but one of them, the first one was actually filled last week, BLG. I know you're excited to read his name out loud for everybody. So the New York Giants have a new general manager. Go off on the name.
The name thing is throwing me off because apparently it's Joe Shane, but okay, there's an O-E in his
It's
last
spelled
name.
Schoen. That's how it's spelled.
Yeah.
The Shane. Right.
But then shouldn't his first name be like Jay Shane? Because you're telling me the O-E in Joe is an O sound, but in the last name somehow it's an A sound? Like, what are we doing here? So yeah. I can't trust a general manager who doesn't know what's going on with his name, and that's a big red flag for me. Other than that, though, I like jokes aside, I do think this is a good hire for the Giants. That's not to say they can't mess it up because they're still the Giants and they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt by any means. But this is like they're at least doing the right process, which is what I talked about before later in the season when things were looking hopeless. I was like, the thing that does, I think you can point to for hope as Giants fans is that they actually held a real GM search. They didn't just, take the new version of Dave Gettleman or promote Kevin Abrams or whatever. Like they held a real search. They talked to different people. They picked someone from a pretty good organization, a team that actually plays in New York State, and they got their GM, and they're going to have them pick the coach as opposed to just trusting the Maras, the ownership, to get the coach right again. They're going to let, or at least it sounds like, the GM is going to have more influence on who the coach is. And I think that's a good step back from ownership, realizing that they don't know what they're doing and they should probably just let someone else make this decision and trust them a little bit more. So, and that's what Ed was also calling for, a Big Blue View, Ed Valentine, who writes for them. So I think this is a positive step for them.
So I agree with everything you said, and I'm going to revise my outlook take on the Giants just a little bit. I'm not here to say the Giants are on track, everything's going to be great, but I do think that the arrow is pointing up in a way that it hasn't in a long time, and I attribute it. I don't believe really anything John Mara says, but I do believe, how in the press conference he had after they talked about firing Joe Judge, how he said, what was the exact quote? It was like, this is the most embarrassed or the most embarrassing day to be affiliated with the Giants or whatever it was. I believe that. I believe he really felt that. And I think we talk about this a lot, especially when we talk about when you're giving tough love to the Eagles or I'm giving tough love to the Cowboys. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize there's a problem. We have to fix this. And I do believe that they were aware that they are at rock bottom. And so in that sense, I think that there has been some level of clarity. How in an action movie, the morning after the crazy battle, when the fog is dissipating and you're okay, all the buildings are disrupted and everything's chaos, but we can start to rebuild. I kind of feel like that's the spot they're in. It will obviously take time if it does ultimately materialize, but I do think that they have reached a point of self-awareness to where they made the right hire. And I don't know that he's the best general manager hired in this cycle, but they went down the right path. They did the right thing. They're continuing to do that. They're trusting in that. And sometimes organizations like this that are, stuck in their ways are like, no, we need a giant. We need a guy, a big blue giant who knows the blue collar way. No, bring in an outsider. This is smart. It's a good move for the Giants, and we'll see that who the head coach is going to be obviously important. If it's Brian Daboll, then I feel even better about who they're going to be. I saw a tweet. I think it was Bill Barnwell that tweeted something like, if Brian Daboll willingly goes from Josh Allen to Daniel Jones, then he is sick. But you don't get to be a head coach, a lot of times in the NFL. So if it's Brian Daboll, that would concern me in the tiniest possible way.
I mean, that's something you could at least talk yourself into a little bit, though, right? Like, not that, I don't think Daniel Jones is going to turn into the next Josh Allen, but you could at least be like, okay, we took this quarterback who had a bunch of tools but wasn't refined, and Dable can kind of work with him. And again, might not be realistic, and I don't think it will be, because I don't think Daniel Jones is the long-term answer in that environment specifically, but there's like a non-zero chance. I don't think, he's a totally lost cause, as we've talked about before. And yeah, you hit on a key point there. It's self-awareness. It's just one of the biggest criticisms I've had of the Eagles is not being honest with themselves. And same thing with you, with the Cowboys, especially coming off the loss. And if they're really going to attribute, how their downfall this season was just because of the refs, as opposed to like issues that they could have controlled, then that's an issue, and you don't want to see that. And to that point, when John Mara did have that press conference and was asked that question and said it was very honest and was like, yeah, it was really embarrassing or whatever. And I thought that was like, wow. First of all, it takes like a lot to admit, because a lot of people wouldn't do that. And it was good for the Giants. And seeing that kind of honesty, it was sobering. So I think this experience, these struggles have been very sobering for the Maras, and they're not putting their heads in the sand and being like, we know better, we're going to double down on all this. They're like, no, we got this wrong, so we're going to change things up. And again, that doesn't mean they'll get it right, but they're at least, I think the process they're using, and I like to, evaluate on process and not just results-oriented thinking. I think the process they're using is one, at the very least, again, like just hope. If you're a Giants fan, you at least have some hope now. You have the first-round picks. You're getting potentially a head coach from, a team that's been good in Dable, or we'll see, or whatever they do there. Right. And then they have a GM who isn't a total dinosaur and is actually kind of coming again from a solid organization. So the arrow has been pointing down on them, and they have hit rock bottom, but there's really nowhere to go but up. But I think the arrow is pointing up.
You have to realize that, though. Like, I think about in a similar way, Ed McCaskey's press conference after the Bears season ended and they fired Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. It was total self-denial. It was total, everything's fine. And so, like, it's hard to be pumped about the Bears. I know they just hired, obviously, Ryan Poles just like a moment ago. By the way, I just saw this tweet as well from Schefter, who noted that Jim Caldwell is in the Bears building. And his exact tweet says, matching the experienced Caldwell with the upstart Ryan Poles is a game plan that some around the league now believe the Bears easily could deploy. So we'll see what happens there. But Jim Caldwell is awesome. I would love to see that. But the McCaskies have not had the rock bottom moment that the Maras seemingly had. It takes a lot. I think John Mara deserves credit for admitting that, especially admitting it publicly. But we'll see. So BLG, this was our first show on YouTube. Do you have anything to say to the YouTube audience specifically? Podcast audience, BLG hates you. So YouTube, look them in the eye, BLG, and tell them whatever you want to.
Definitely subscribe. Smash that like button. Are these YouTube terms? I'm not on YouTube much, but I got to finally say it. So really big deal. No, we appreciate you listening to the pod, obviously. I think we've had a lot of fun here during the season. So if you're new to this, hopefully you'll have fun too. And it's not just about RJ and me. I know RJ likes to make everything about himself. It's fine. I never do that. It's about the audience too. We like the engagement. So, leave some comments. We want to interact and have fun. And that's the goal of the show. That's the mission statement. At least I am saying that is the mission statement of the NFC East pod. It's to have fun. Like, we talk about football, whatever, but the goal is to have fun. It's not like we're trying to prove we're the best football analysts of all. No, it's not about that, RJ. It's just about having fun. Everyone's having a good time. So hopefully people are having fun. That's my hope.
That's well said. That's good life advice. Just have fun, have hope, and enjoy. You know what I mean? BLG, the last, I don't know, The last sentence belongs to you. I won't even put a word count on it.
Rate, review, subscribe. Check out the SB Nation NFL show.
Nice. See y'all next time.